content marketing, in my opinion, is so critical because our consumers are in complete control of the information they take in. If you look back before 1990, advertising was probably your best choice because there were only 8 channels consumers could get their information through. So big brands and big media companies had all the power because they controlled those channels. Well, today there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways our consumers can get information. They can basically bypass the entire sales process to get the information they want to buy about anything. So if that's the case, our information has to be relevant, valuable, and interesting, or our consumers are going to completely ignore us.
Is that on now? There's no light though.
God morgen. I går så tror jeg startet uten å presentere meg. Og for et år tilbake så arrangerte jeg en konferanse med 400 deltakere, og gikk opp på scenen og presenterte, og så leverte jeg en evalueringsskjema etterpå, og så kom det en tilbakemelding om at det var fin informasjon, men hvem I all verdens dager var han som sto på scenen? Så mitt navn Ola Hamre. Jeg driver I dag Content Marketing Norge sammen med Carl Wilhelm. Du her? Ja. Du kan riste opp, vet du. Ja. Og det her nettsida til contentmarketing.no. Dere kan gå inn der og se alt vi gjør. Men vi prøver å være en kompetansearena for content marketing og native advertising I Norge. Vi har 2 store konferanser I året og 3 seminarer. Og det som sagt da bare gå inn og se på hva vi gjør, melde dere på nyhetsbrevet vårt og motta informasjon om både oss og samarbeidspartnere og det som skjer. Det var litt av det som jeg fant på et Content Norge på Twitter-kontoen I går. Over alt som skjedde. Var det bra? Vi får se om det blir like bra I dag. Her en god del av de tweetene som ble sendt ut fra oss. Astrid, hun sitter der. Astrid Valen Utvik. Hun twitterer som bare det på arrangementene våre, så har vært med ganske mange ganger. Så følg gjerne, og del gjerne på et hashtag Content Norge. Noe av det som kom inn var liksom som man kan ta lærdom av, og se gjennom kontoen og huske på en måte hva som ble sagt av alle foredragsholderne. En del gode ting. The only way you will discover your potential is to push your limits. Det gjør jeg blant annet I dag. Vi har ikke noe ordstyr I dag, men da skal jeg være der. Og så det der med bildebruk. Increase reach by 600%. Jeff Bullas, da tar vi med bildet hans. De her talerne i dag, jeg synes gårsdagen var kjempebra. Dagen i dag blir også kjempebra, tror jeg. Men jeg må nesten ta med alle de som med å støtte og bygge på en måte Content Marketing Norge. Der ulike aktører i bransjen som jobber med content marketing, både byråer og leverandører. Ikke så mange medier ennå, de kommer kanskje. Og det kanskje ikke alle som kjenner alle her. Vet dere hva alle sammen gjør? Det godt kjent med alle sammen? Nei? For det jo litt sånn at man tror at noen gjør en ting, og så gjør de egentlig noe helt annet. PR Newswire, for eksempel. Kjenner dere de? De her i dag, ikke sant? Kan du fortelle kort? Organizers. Et annet selskap ganske sikker på mange ikke kjenner, og det Strossel. Vet alle hvem Strossel hva de gjør? Strossel? Richard? Kjempebra. Også når man driver med det her, så det mange selskaper som ringer og har lyst til å være med for så vidt. Og for noen måneder siden så ringte et selskap som heter for Acrolinks. Was that right? And Acrolinks. And I didn't know anything about you. But can you please tell us a little bit? Okay. Vi kan gå gjennom mange her også, men poenget mitt at man ser logoer, man hører om selskaper, men hva det egentlig de kan hjelpe dere med å skape verdi? Og det litt av poenget med å være på arrangementet også, selvfølgelig networking og den biten, men snakk med dem, hør hva de kan tilby av verdi, eller om man finner fort ut, det noe for meg, eller ikke. Så, i dag har vi et for så vidt utrolig bra program, synes jeg. Vi har 3 keynote speakere her, eller 3 sessioner her i dag, og så har vi ulike fagsesjoner som dere kan velge å gå på. Så fra klokka 12 og frem til klokka 3 cirka, så kan dere se på programmet, hva som passer best, og gå fra hver sesjon til sesjon. Vi åpner i dag. The first speaker up today is Anne. Here's the lady. Come on, Anne. Come on. This lady was the first chief content officer in the world.
In the world.
In the world.
Universe.
In the universe.
Galaxy.
And Anne is well, all the pictures, of course, and all the videos. And when I meet her, she always smiles. And you have managed content for many years.
Well, not that many, but yeah.
Not that many. But you help organizations and individuals with content. Mm-hmm. And you have written a couple of books. 2. Right. 2 books. And one of them you are going to talk about a little bit today. Yeah. And well, I think you can do the rest of the presentation.
Okay.
And just go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a video? Okay. So hi. See, always smiling, because how can you not smile when you're holding platters of meat, right? I'm really excited to be here with you today. I was up all night practicing my Norwegian. Hi. That's as far as I got. So today I'm going to talk to you about content. I'm going to talk about good versus good enough content. How do we actually produce the kind of content that our customers, our prospects, our clients want? So very often the idea of content is framed as a kind of quality versus quantity issue, right? As the amount of content that we produce, as the quantity of the amount of, as the quantity goes up, so for example, as the number of posts that we're writing for our blogs, or as the number of infographics that we're producing, or the number of videos, as that goes up, the quality can sort of start to nosedive a little bit, or at least level off. You know, and we see this in our lives, like when you think about, you know, restaurants that you go to, as the number of, you know, restaurants in a particular chain increases, like, you know, in a fast food kind of world, the quality of that, you know, you sort of expect a little bit less. Or even in a marketing construct too, we see this, you know, as the size of your email list grows, the response rate can kind of start to level off a little bit. But I don't think that has to be the case. I don't think that quality and quantity have to be in tension. I actually think that the two can actually coexist really nicely. That's why I wrote this book, because I wanted to help people like you. I wanted to help businesses and marketers learn how to produce the kind of content that is of high quality, but also of high quantity. So I don't think that the two things have to be in tension. I think that the two can actually work together really well. I think they can coexist really well. But I think you'd have to get the basics right. So there are 3 things that you have to think about when you think about your content production, as you think about producing the kind of content that you need to produce. And those 3 things are bigger, braver, and bolder. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. What do I mean by that? How do we actually take these 3 words and put them into use for our own companies? I do think that the biggest missed opportunity in content marketing today is playing it too safe. And I know Jeff Bullis talked a little bit about this yesterday, about taking risks. But I think we have a tremendous opportunity, right, to sort of reinvent what we do, to do things differently. So I want to show you an example of something that I saw recently that I think kind of dramatizes this, kind of plays this out. So what you're looking at right here is an Instagram account, an Instagram feed for a product put out by Caress Unilever called Love Forever. And it goes like this. I'm not gonna play it for you, but it's a series of, I don't know, 10 or 12 videos. And as you go through, each piece, it's a little, 15-second video. And it goes like this. In the first segment, you see the name of the product, Caress, then, Love Forever, and then it sort of tells you how you do this. You sort of play each one and scroll down. And it tells a story. And the story that it tells is of a woman. She's, dressed to the nines. She walks into a nightclub, and she looks around, and she doesn't see anybody right away that she knows. So she walks to the center of the dance floor, and she starts dancing. As you do when you walk into a nightclub by yourself, you go to the center of the dance floor, and you start dancing, right? And so as she's dancing, she's caressing her skin, as you do when you're dancing by yourself in the middle of a nightclub. And as she's caressing her skin, these rose petals are flying off, as they do when you're dancing by yourself in the middle of a nightclub caressing your own skin. And so the rose petals sort of, waft across the room. They eventually reach a waiter who's on the other side of the room, and she looks at him, and he looks at her, and he's like, "Who, me?" And she's like, "Yeah, you." And so they sort of dance toward each other. And the very last segment comes up, could this be the beginning of Love Forever? This is okay, right? It's kind of a story that we've heard a million times, though, right? Sort of a, girl meets boy sort of, story. Here's how the internet reacted. I love the internet so much, if only just for this comment. Isn't that brutal? I guess I'll comment since no one else did. Like, as a marketer, as a business, doesn't that kind of hurt your soul a little bit? Like, I feel so bad for these people. I don't mean to pick on this. I mean, I'm sure there's some really talented people that worked on this. There was a lot of money, there was a lot of time, a lot of attention that went into producing this. But my problem with it, though, is that it's nothing really unique, right? It's essentially a commercial that Caress or Unilever, sliced up into these little 15-second videos and called, social content, right? It's essentially a commercial, though, that is advertising that they are playing as kind of content marketing. My problem with it is that it's not that. It's sort of selling the idea short in the sense that, I think the idea of social media, of using content to do something different, the promise of that is so great. These guys just didn't take advantage of it, right? Instead, they just sort of took this story, this idea that we've always known, a commercial, and put it out on social media and called it something different. So why does this matter in our world? Why should I care about this so much? Why should you care about this so much? It's because we live in a really noisy world, right? There's a lot going on all the time. There's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of things that we could be doing at all times of the day. And marketers are part of this too, right? We are producing a lot of content just like, everybody else out there. I know Joe shared a bit of our research yesterday. 88% of UK organizations plan to produce more content in 2016. And I do know, by the way, that Norway is not part of it. But it's the closest I could get. I'm sorry, guys. The only other thing I could do was share North America. That felt, a little bit worse. So in our research, we ask, companies worldwide, what are you planning to do as relates to content marketing in 2016? 88% of UK organizations plan to produce more content in 2016. So they're looking to produce more. We have found actually that worldwide, this is pretty much what's going on. More and more companies are embracing content, are embracing the opportunity. 66% of those organizations plan to spend more on content in 2016, so we're producing more, we're spending more. Remember this scene from Jaws? This is like how we react, I think, as businesses. Remember this scene from, the movie Jaws where, Roy Schneider sees this giant website, and he's like, we're going to need more content? Remember that scene? Do we see the same movies? So here's the reality. This is how we tend to react. We just, this is an opportunity. We have more and more and more. But here's the reality we found in our research from last year. Just 34% of UK organizations know that their content is effective, right? So just 1 in 3 of us know that our content is actually doing what we need it to do, that it's actually driving business. It's not just content for content's sake, but actually is doing what we need it to do. Interestingly, we found that engaging content, how do you produce, what's your biggest pain point? We asked marketers, asked businesses. Producing and creating engaging content has been the top challenge for the past 6 years that Joe and I have done this bit of content marketing research. My feeling, though, is that engaging content is way more about brains than it is about budget. Like, think about that Unilever commercial / Instagram feed that I showed you. That was a lot of money that went into that, a lot of time and attention. That was way more about budget than it was about brains. And so I feel like that, the idea of how do we actually do this, it has more to do with how much time and effort and care you put into it than it does with how big your budget is. I think of it like this, too. I think of like awesome marketing is like the outside. That's the part that everybody sees. But there is some element of kind of guts, right? You sort of have to really know that what we're doing is unique, it's special, it's taking advantage of the opportunity that we have before us. So I do think you need some element of guts in the content that you're producing. Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we actually produce the kind of content that's going to drive business for our own organizations? As I said, I think it hinges on 3 things: bigger, braver, and bolder, right? Putting your marketing, your story, so to speak, in a bigger context, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second. To be braver marketers and to produce braver marketing, and then also to take a bolder perspective, right? To adopt a bolder point of view. So the first thing I want to talk about today is bigger context. How do we actually do this? How do we actually put our story in a bigger context? Here's an example of what I mean by that. So Pizza Hut. Do you have Pizza Hut here in Norway? Yes, no? Some of you saying yes, some of you saying no. I don't know what to do with that. This is Pizza Hut. Sign. Huh? Okay. Sign on the side of the road. I guess there was somebody saying that they were at Pizza Hut right now. Can I take your order, please? Pizza Hut, sign on the side of the road. Underneath it, it said, which is like, of course. So that's not a bigger context, right? That's not a bigger story. That's sort of stating the obvious. That's a corporate-centric point of view, right? That's saying, here's what we do. It's not about the customer. What do I mean by bigger context is not that. Instead, a bigger story puts your business in the context of what people care about. And then I think the advantage is that we can use that bigger story to convert more people into your tribe, right? Or as my teenage daughter would say, into my squad. Do you have squad here? Yes and no. Again, people. If you have teenagers, you probably know squad. So here's my favorite example of a company who I think does this incredibly well. This is Blue Bottle Coffee. They have they're based in Oakland, California. They have a couple of outlets in San Francisco. They recently opened one in London. They have one in Tokyo as well. I had noticed Blue Bottle Coffee when I had been to San Francisco on business trips. And outside of their stores, you see people sort of queued up, see people in line. And I used to think, well, that's interesting. I wonder what's so amazing about their coffee. But I'd never been there. So what really piqued my interest, though, was when I happened to see that Blue Bottle Coffee had produced a class on Skillshare. So Skillshare is an online learning platform. You can go there to learn anything from email marketing to wedding calligraphy to flower arranging to accounting for small business, like anything. If you want to find a class, they probably have it. They have thousands and thousands of classes. But what had piqued my interest on Skillshare was when I happened to notice that Blue Bottle Coffee had produced a class on how to brew an amazing cup of coffee. And I was like, well, that's dumb, because I've been drinking coffee, my whole adult life. Why do I need to take a class to learn how I'm doing it wrong? Is that what that is? So if I'm being honest with you guys, I will tell you that I took this class essentially to mock it. Right? That's pretty much all you need to know about my personality right there, by the way. So I took this class to mock it, and I'm sort of going through like I'm looking at the agenda, for this 1-hour class that I'm about to take. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's like tasting coffee. There's like 8 minutes on tasting coffee right there. And then right underneath it, you can't even enjoy it until the next segment, which is like 2 minutes on enjoying coffee, which I thought was curious. You taste it for 8 minutes. No, not yet, and no, boom, now enjoy it, go. So the thing was, as I said, I took this class to mock it, and I turned out that the joke was kind of on me. Essentially, I found out that I didn't know a whole lot about coffee. I didn't know the difference between blade grinding and burr grinding. I didn't know why the source of your beans mattered. I didn't know why water temperature mattered and water source and so on. In other words, I learned a whole lot about coffee. I didn't know that I actually was doing it wrong my whole life. And then guess what? I ended up becoming a subscriber to Blue Bottle Coffee. This stuff is like $19 a pound in US. It's like 160 Norwegian. That's crazy, right? But free shipping. So I felt like I was winning. So why do I love this so much? It's because it elevated me, right? It offered me deep value, and as a result made me a smarter, more informed customer. It wasn't about Blue Bottle, although there was plenty of Blue Bottle branding all over this class that I took, right, this 1-hour class, but it wasn't about them. It was instead about me. It was about elevating the knowledge of the customer. So why this works so well, and some things that I think any of us can take from it, it definitely puts their product in a bigger context, right? It's about me, it's about the customer, it's about educating everyone to make them understand why you should pay $19 a pound for coffee. It was a real class with real curriculum, and it was really engaging because it was video, right? Because it was Michael Phillips, who's a barista at Blue Bottle Coffee, standing there talking to me in much the way that I'm talking to you now. He's not particularly polished. He's not overly polished. He's just sort of telling you how it is. So it was really engaging. It was real. It's the idea of training as marketing too, right? Elevating your customers so that they are more informed, they are smarter. And as a result, they sort of feel part of something, right? So it's not just about the product at all. In fact, it's not about the product. Instead, it's about the customer, making them feel aligned with your brand or your product. There are other ways to do this. I'm not saying that you should go and, launch an online class, an online video class. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, how can you educate your customer? How can you make them feel part of something? So what you're looking at here is a site called Furthermore, which is published by Equinox Health Club. They are, Equinox Health Clubs is a group of health clubs internationally. They have a couple in London. They have them in Chicago. They have them in New York. They also have them in Japan. So what Equinox does through their Furthermore site is they cover stories about health and fitness and wellness, but also just about life, about lifestyle, sort of at a depth that their audience wants. Equinox Health Club is the kind of place that will attract the sort of high-performance individual, right? So the person who really wants to kill it at the gym, but who also kind of wants to, be high-performing in life, who kind of wants to kill it in life as well. So they publish stories that sort of elevate the knowledge of that audience to sort of give them the inside track. So here's an example of one of the things that they do. Man buns? Forget it. Man braids are where it's at. Michael, get on that. You got to start. You got to up your game. So man braids are like the thing, right? They're letting folks know. This is like as seen at our gym, right? Man braids. Also Kigo. So they had Kigo curate a playlist for essentially music to work out by, right? Sort of to up your game at the gym. And they did this. The time with Kigo is do you guys know Kigo? Yeah, okay. Of course you do. Thank you. No no's this time. So they asked him to produce a workout playlist that would coincide with the release of his album, which just came out, I think, last week or so. It's a great example, I think, of not following trends, but instead sort of inserting yourself into the lives of your customer, right? Sort of leading them, so that it's just much the way that Blue Bottle did, much the way that Equinox does. And this, by the way, isn't a story that they tell just on the Furthermore website. They use this hashtag, Go Further, Want More, all across their social channels, right? So it's not hashtag Equinox Health Club, although, they use that too. But they sort of align their audience around this concept of going further in life and wanting more. And by the way, I really don't know what's going on over here. It is disturbing, I know. I don't know what that is. So the takeaways from a sort of a bigger context, a bigger story are this. How do you lead your own industry, right? Not just your market specifically, but, more broadly, broader market. How do you lead? What story can you tell with a depth and breadth that doesn't otherwise exist? Even if you think you are in an incredibly saturated market, like think about health and wellness. That's a pretty saturated market. Think about who you are attracting, though, who you are targeting, right? How can you meet their needs? How can you approach your content with a depth and breadth that doesn't otherwise exist? And then how do you build a tribe, a squad audience, right? Not how do you build customers per se, but how do you actually align yourself with what your audience cares about? All right, my second point here today is about being bolder, right? How do we be bolder marketers? How do we create bolder marketing? I think key to this is telling bolder stories that deliver richer insights and better experiences. So a company who I think does this incredibly well is Slack. Anybody here know Slack? Use Slack? Yeah, okay, good. A couple people do. We use it all the time at Marketing Profs. So Slack is a team communication tool. It's very seamless, very easy to use. It allows anybody who is in, or employees or staff who are in sort of, or partners who are in disparate areas to connect, or even if you're in the same office. Really seamless, really easy to use. These guys are killing it. They're the fastest growing business-to-business application, I think, in like ever. They have like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 bajillion users. That's a number. Something like that. A lot. They have a lot of users. Stuart Butterfield, who's the founder of Flickr, is also a founder of Slack. So it's got a lot of really good momentum behind it. Great product, great leadership, sort of it's a great segue into the market. Contributing to this, though, is their content. So one of the things that they do is they produce something called the Slack Variety Pack. So what you're looking at here is one of the episodes that they put out. The podcast is a half-hour show. It's a half-hour variety pack that is not about Slack, right? It's not about the product itself. It's not about how to get more out of the product. Instead, it's about the customer. Instead, it's a variety pack about business innovation, tech culture, and people who have found their purpose. So there's a couple things that I really like about this podcast, a couple things that I think they do really well. And one of them is that they produce segments as part of this half-hour show. Some of the segments are sort of real easy and quick, like this shot. Do you think that looks like urine? I just realized that. It's not. It's tequila, if you're a tequila drinker. I got to change that. Okay. So they produce shots of tequila, not urine, and then they produce sort of more substantive stories too. They take a little bit longer to digest, like the big gulp on the other side there. So here's an example of sort of a quick hit kind of fun story. This is a story where they ask kids to solve everyday workplace problems. So they ask kids questions like, what do you do when that guy in the next cubicle doesn't wear deodorant? What do you do when someone keeps stealing the yogurt out of the fridge in your office? That kind of thing. And then the kids sort of gave their very serious answers to what do we do about these workplace problems. So that's sort of in the quick hit, sort of fun, light part of the show. On the other extreme, they produce stories like this. Old MacDonald Had a Drone, which is about how drones are changing the face of farming, right? Making farms more effective, more efficient, and so on. So it's a mix of part serious and sort of part fun. So I called up Bill Makaitis, who's the CMO of Slack, and I asked him about his goals for the show. What's the story with this? Why do you do it this way? And he said that he's trying to create sort of the best landing page possible for Slack, right? The best introduction. He said that I believe that a brand is the sum of every experience that a customer has with you. Unfortunately, he said, many first experiences are kind of crappy. And he said this, for many people, the first interaction they have with a company is via a sterile, lifeless lead gen ad that takes you to a prison landing page where you're forced to enter in your life's information. You know you'll get immediately called by an overbearing sales rep before you're ready to have that conversation. And he said it just like that, like without taking a breath. Like, haven't we all had this experience in some way or another? Last week, or no, actually it was earlier this week, I was at a hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, in the States. And I had this exact experience when I went to log into the Wi-Fi, and I had forgotten my account number. And so it sort of took me through this, like, it was a prison landing page that just would not let me go. And it kept reverting me back to, well, enter in your account. I can't because I can't get online. And it was, like, terrible. So this is the kind of stuff that, we tend to do as marketers, right? Because you're looking to sort of, figure out who this customer is, like, sort of too fast, right? So he's trying to create a better experience. There are a couple things, or there's one other thing in particular that I think we can all sort of steal from this, and it's the notion of creating two channels for the content, right? And so in Slack's case, this half-hour show is released as a half-hour show with the segments intact. They also do something else that I think is super smart. It's super tactical, but it's super smart. They take that half-hour show, and they take each segment within that half-hour show and release it separately on SoundCloud and Stitcher and some other places to make it inherently shareable, right? So they make it as shareable as possible. So here's an example of why they do that. So they produce something called the Slack single servings. So they have the Slack variety pack, which is the half-hour show, and then they have Slack single servings, which are these little, 2, 3, 4-minute segments. So why do they do this? It's because they are trying to, again, the idea of this is to make it the best introduction possible for Slack. So they want to make it, they want to make sure that they make it super easy for anybody who wants to share the stories. So that guy who always wears shorts at work, and they went to him and they said, why do you always wear shorts at work, even when it's like, in the middle of winter? Why do you do this? Why do they produce this show in particular? Why do they take every segment and release it separately? It's because they know that everybody knows this guy or is this guy. And they're going to put it on Facebook, they're going to release it on Twitter and so on, so that they can sort of, enhance the shareability of what they're doing. Or do you remember this story? Yeah, David after dentist. So the story, if you don't know it, this little boy named David was 6 years ago. He went to the dentist, he had some dental work done, he had a lot of drugs, and he was in the back seat of the car driving home with his dad. And he was kind of like loopy in the back seat, and he was asking him, he started like, just sort of talking, and he was asking questions like, is this real? Or is this forever? Or what is life? And so his dad, like any good modern parent, took out his video camera and filmed his drugged son in the back seat and then put it out on YouTube, because that's what we do. So this story at the time, 6 years ago, when YouTube was pretty much brand new, there was only 7 or 8 videos on YouTube at the time. So this story went kind of viral. A lot of people, heard about it, saw David, know the story. So Slack, because, they're all about tech culture, they knew that this story would resonate with, the audience that they're trying to reach. They caught up with David 6 years later and asked him questions like, interviewed he and his dad and asked them questions like, what's been going on? How is it to be a sort of YouTube sensation? How's therapy going? That kind of stuff. So they caught up with him. The story did so well for them, it sort of went nuts. 75,000 folks listened to this, and so the sharing on this was like crazy, right? It's because everybody knows the story, so that's why they do it. They release it in 2 ways to enhance the shareability of what they're spending so much time and energy and effort on. So there are other paths to bold. One of my favorite examples of a company who I think does this incredibly well is the Humane Society of Silicon Valley. The Humane Society of Silicon Valley is it's essentially a pet shelter. They do lots of great work in terms of rehoming unwanted pets. But what I really love about what they do is that their marketing is so crazy. Remember what I said to you about how it's more about brains than budget? This is a nonprofit. They don't have a ton of money, but they're really smart in what they do. So part of what they do is they have a sort of bigger program that they put out recently that was based on a bit of data that they noticed. They noticed that out of $358 billion in giving nationwide in the U.S., less than 1% was going to animal-related causes. And that's not just shelters, that's like, any animal-related cause. They wanted to sort of change the narrative around that. They wondered, why is that, and what can we do to sort of help that, right? It wasn't just about their particular shelter. Instead, it was about all shelters, right? It was about all giving. They wanted to change the narrative from people or animals. So it's not a choice of, you give to people or you give to animals. They wanted to make it more of an and. They wanted to make it you give to people and animals, because when you give to animals, you help people. Carol Novello, who's the executive director of the Humane Society of Silicon Valley, said that animals are not a second-class cause in their view. Rescue isn't just one direction. So what they did is they launched a sort of bigger content initiative, a bigger content effort. And they produced a 6-minute mini documentary called Eric and Petey. And the story centers around a guy named Eric O'Gray, who was overweight, obese. His doctor told him that if he didn't sort of change his lifestyle, that he would be dead within 5 years. And the story centers around how he goes to his therapist, and she suggests that he adopt a shelter dog so that he could kind of get out of himself a little bit and think about, taking care of this dog, and as a result, sort of maybe taking a little bit better care of himself. So as I said, it's a 6-minute documentary. I just cut a little piece of this to show you, to give you a sense of the story.
When people see a photo of who I was 5 years ago, they can't and often don't believe that it's me. My weight had crept up to 340 pounds. My blood pressure was through the roof, super high cholesterol. I had type 2 diabetes and I was taking over $1,000 worth of medications a month. And I just felt really uncomfortable around other people. I became separated from society and I just stopped living. I went on a business trip. You know how small airplane seats are. I could barely squeeze into one, and basically I'd spill over both sides. They had to delay the flight because they didn't have a seatbelt extension that would fit me. There was a gentleman next to me, and he just looked in complete disgust, and he looked at me and he goes, "I'm going to miss my connection because you're too fat." That really was my bottom point. That's the point that I really decided that, I'm either going to die or I have to do something. I looked in the phone book and I found a nutritionist near me. One of the first things that she asked me to do was to go adopt a shelter dog. It would force me to go outside. It would force me to become more socially interactive. So I went to the local shelter, and I remember telling the lady I would like an obese middle-aged dog so that I would have something in common with him. And when I walked into the room, we both looked at each other with like a look of, really?
Isn't that fantastic? I love that so much. This resonated with a lot of people. It goes on, it tells a story about how they started running together. He started to, because he had to walk this obese middle-aged dog, he also, of course, was walking himself. And so the story goes on about how he ultimately became a half marathon runner, lost a lot of weight, and sort of, retooled his life completely. It's a fantastic story. The goal for this was, again, to sort of change the narrative. So they wanted to spread this story as far and wide as they could, which they absolutely did. Last time I checked, just a couple weeks ago, it already had 25 million views. It had, 500,000 shares, so it did incredibly, incredibly well. It shared all over the world, all kinds of places, just lots and lots of play for this, not just in the U.S., but, again, worldwide. They put it on a landing page at mutualrescue.com. The idea here was to try to collect more of these stories, right? So it wasn't even really about, inspiring giving or really even adoption. It was really just about tell us your story. My favorite part of this, though, is that then even if you don't have your own story, the subscription piece right here, subscribe to Mutual Rescue, right? This is key, because it wasn't just, if you don't have a story to tell, well, then just go away. Instead, if you're the kind of person who loves this story so much, you landed on this website, they want to try to, get folks involved with the story, more broadly as well. So again, as I said, the goal here was really about can we get more stories. They were hoping to get about 150 stories. They ended up with over 400 in the mutual rescue stories. They just closed it at the end of April. So it was a tremendous win for these guys. Carol told me that helping animals helps people too, right? The two are intertwined. So again, that was the narrative that they were trying to tell. And by the way, the Humane Society of Silicon Valley does a great job. Very often in animal rescue, especially, you sort of get this narrative of sort of like a sadness in a sense. Like when you see those commercials come on TV, it's got a Sarah McLachlan kind of soundtrack. It's kind of sad, and they usually shoot it through like a chain link fence. You know what I mean? So it's like you feel like these animals are caged in there, and they sort of make you feel like guilty and bad about yourself. So so more broadly, they're trying to change the narrative about that too. So recently they had this little hairless creature come in, a Mexican hairless mini dog come in, and the narrative that they told, it was more broadly, what's wrong with hairless animals? Hairless animals are actually kind of great. Like, think about hairless people. Like, they're not scary. They're not, like this little creature back here is not scary, because this guy's not scary. This guy, Askell, not scary. Sometimes hair is scary. So the takeaways from here really are you delivering great content experiences on your audience's terms, right? Are you making it easy for them to access and to share if that's what the goal of your content is? And does your content tell a different story with a specific point of view, right? Have you really thought through what that bigger story is? Are you really telling it in sort of a way that's recognizable? Which sort of leads me to my last point, which is really about having a braver perspective, a braver point of view. I do think that tone of voice is your gutsiest, bravest asset. I think it's vastly undervalued by most companies out there, especially in the business-to-business world, especially if you sell a B2B solution. I think it's vastly undervalued. Very often when I talk about tone of voice, or even about perspective, people think that I'm talking about grammar. I'm not talking about grammar. I mean, grammar is part of it, but tone of voice is not about grammar. I'll just leave that there for a minute. So grammar is part of it, but it's not just grammar, right? Instead, it's about three things. It's about who you are. Secondly, it's about why you do what you do. So not what you do, but why you do it. And then finally, what you are like to deal with. So when I think about tone of voice, I think about it like this. It reflects your culture, it amplifies your story, and it communicates with empathy with the people you want to reach, right? With the audience that you are seeking to reach. Or more memorably, maybe I always try to sort of break things down into sort of a more memorable mnemonic, I guess. I think of it like this. It's culture times story times empathy equals tone of voice. And those multiplication signs are key, by the way. They're not addition signs. They're multiplication signs, because if the value of any one of those things is zero, if your voice is really not reflecting your culture, if it's not really amplifying your story, or if it's not communicating with empathy with the people you're trying to reach, then I think the sum or the product of that actually is zero, right? And so elements of those three things have to exist in order to have a tone of voice that works for your own company. So one of my favorite examples of a company who I think does this incredibly well is M&R. And M&R is a consultancy that helps nonprofits improve their footprint online. Essentially, they help them take advantage of digital tools to just have more impact in the world. So here's their homepage. Right on their homepage is what it says. We help nonprofits achieve real, lasting change. We only work with clients we believe in, and we take risks. So that construct that I shared with you a minute ago, it's all here, right? Who are they? They help nonprofits achieve real, lasting change. Why do they do that? Because we only work with clients they believe in. So if you are a nonprofit that advances something they don't believe in, they don't want to work with you. It's just going to be an awkward fit. And then we take risks. That's a sort of empathy piece right there. Right? What are you like to deal with? If you are the kind of nonprofit that does not really want to push the envelope when it comes to, advancing your online footprint, then you're probably not going to be very comfortable working with M&R. So every year, M&R does a benchmark study that takes a look at the state of online giving in the nonprofit community. And this is a landing page that they put up for last year's study, in which they're announcing that benchmarks has arrived. So I just want to share a little bit about how they sound different, right? How you get a sense of, even though this is kind of a very serious company, and even though this product, this benchmark study that they're putting out there is a research study, it's very significant, they nonetheless are sort of describing it in a very different way. So the landing page has, benchmarks has arrived. Underneath it, they sort of do like an FAQ, like a frequently asked questions, with themselves. They're sort of interviewing themselves. And a piece of it goes like this. So it's super, super nerdy. Yes and also no. Collecting and analyzing such a wealth of information warmed the cockles of our data nerd hearts, because we are the kind of weirdos who get really excited about comparative metrics and nifty data trends, and also we like saying cockles. That sounds really useful. We know it totally is. Now remember, they're interviewing themselves here, right? This is like an FAQ that they did with themselves. We know, we're totally awesome. So I called up Madeline Stenosis, who is a partner at M&R, and I said to her, I love the copywriting on your site. I love the copywriting on your landing page, the email that you guys put out to announce this benchmark study. It's all fantastic. And she said, here's the thing, it's not just copywriting. She said, it's who we are, it's how we do the work. If the label falls off, it's ours. I love that so much. If the label falls off, it's ours, right? And I challenge myself with that all the time with my own work, with our own business. If the label falls off, do you know it's you? Do you sound like everybody else, or do you sound different, right? Do you sound unique? Madeline said that they think about their voice in terms of having 3 different attributes. They're super smart, they're weirdly creative, and they're scrappy. They'll sort of do whatever it takes. So you might be thinking, well, like bully for M&R, but we're not that, right? We're not edgy or scrappy or fun or flippant or oddball or, insert another adjective there, like we're not any of those things. I'm not saying that you have to be sort of, on the edge like that. I'm not saying you have to be edgy like that. Instead, I'm saying, who are you? So think of it as kind of a marketing kind of Mad Lib. Can you think of like the 3 adjectives you could use to describe yourself? So in the business-to-business space, Uberflip, a Toronto, Canada-based company, went through this exercise. They thought, what are the 3 words we can use to describe ourselves? They're not edgy or flip or particularly creative either, but what they are cheeky, they're accessible, and they're progressive. These are the 3 words they came up with to describe themselves. And then they did something else that I really loved. They took their whole sort of tone of voice guide, their whole style guide, and they put it online at styleguide.uberflip.com. If any of you are thinking that you want to create a style guide for your own company, for your own business, I would highly suggest that you go there and check it out. They take each of those attributes, each of those characteristics, like cheeky, and they describe, well, what does that actually mean? It means we have a personality and we're not afraid to show it. How do they achieve that? They use humor, a casual way of writing, and they remain personable. This is like so great. If you have a team of content producers who are writing for you, if it's not just one person, right? This is a way to sort of ensure, your voice. This is a way of ensuring your perspective is sort of across the company with all the content that you're producing. So they go through this for each of the attributes. They put it all online, like I said, at styleguide.uberflip.com. You can go there and sort of check it out. And I love this one in particular, Uberflippanese, which is like, it's sort of the jargon that they use all the time. We all have that in our world, like the sort of jargon that they use to signal that, we understand B2B content publishing. So they sort of explain right there, like here's the words that we do use all the time, and here's what they mean. So jargon isn't bad, but it is bad if it doesn't match your audience. In this case, they're saying these are words that our audience will understand. So think about what the 3 words are for your own organization, for your own company, only you can't cheat, right? You can't use words like this, like friendly, reliable, or honest, because, that's just, we should be that way. As companies, as people, we should be that way. And you can't use words like this either, like cutting edge or revolutionary or proactive, or any of the other words that are just like gross, right? Because they're just don't. I think that the notion of brand voice is important, especially if you are a smaller company, if you are an agency, if you are a consultancy, like M&R, for example. Your brand voice can attract and repel. I think as marketers, we tend to think only about the attraction piece of it, but we can also use our brand voice to sort of repel people who won't be a good fit with us, right? So attracting people to us, attracting the like-minded, but also think about like repelling the timid, right? Repelling those people who are not going to be a good fit with us. Another company who does an amazing job with their brand voice and their perspective is Chubbies. Do you guys know Chubbies here? No, this is like pretty much a solid no across the board. Chubbies is a online retailer. They sell short shorts for men, like super short shorts for men. Now you want to know them, don't you? So one of the things that Chubbies does really, really well is they practice what I call the rule of Fitzwivis. Fitzwivis means to find interesting ways to say boring stuff. This is just a quick screenshot that I took from them. You see like mailing list awesomeness here, right? Most of us do like, sign up or subscribe, and then the call to action is subscribe. In their case, mailing list awesomeness, and then the call to action is boom shakalaka. Talk to an actual human in the center, or share if you hate pants. Again, short shorts for men. They hate pants. They're like the anti-pant company. They actually call them leg prisons, because they are. So, you walk into a store or a retailer or an establishment, and very often they say, like, friend us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. I like that these guys tell you why. Like, here's the community that we're building. We're like-minded with you, right? Because we hate pants just like you do if you're on this site shopping for short shorts. There's lots of different places you can think about, the rule of Fitzwivis, the About Us section of your website, which is usually ignored by a lot of companies, popovers or landing pages, microcopy, that bit that appears on a mobile phone at the top of an email that goes out. Instagram, vastly undervalued. Don't just tell me what's there. Sort of, give me the bigger story behind it. FAQs or email confirmation pages. I can't talk about tone of voice without telling you about my favorite company, Freaker. Freaker USA is a company that sells drink insulators. Essentially, they go over any like a can or a bottle of beer or something like that. What you're looking at here is their subscribe page, that the confirmation email that comes when you subscribe to their email list. Let me just read to you what it says. If you receive this email by a whoopsies, simply delete it. We won't haunt you with a subscription to our ass-kicking newsletter. You won't be delivered weekly sales and giveaways. You will never know love. Like, that's killer, right? I love it so much that they're sort of taking advantage of this opportunity to, sort of tell their story more broadly, to really lean into the tone of voice, to immediately telling you that they're a different kind of company. And again, this is something that they sort of extend all across their social channels. And they give you really useful tips like this. Like if you want an instant 12-pack, this is what you do. You just lean against a fence. You're going to thank me for that. So I think it's a great example of, not just taking, not just sort of accepting the default on a lot of the communication that we have out there. When I think about content marketing, I think of it as everything that touches the lives of our customers, of our prospects, of the people that we are trying to attract. I think of it like this. Remember this scene from Lion King when he like holds up baby Simba and he's like, everything the light touches is content? Right? Again, we see different movies. That's the exact line. So the takeaways from this section are really, if you covered up your logo, would you recognize you? Are you taking advantage of every opportunity that you have to sort of describe yourself differently, or do you sound like everybody else? All right, my last story here today is how do you sell a flat piece of metal for essentially $29 or over $1,000 in Norwegian. This is a story about my friend Anders Langston. He lives in Boston, Massachusetts, not too far from where I live. Anders joined the family business, which is a company called Stoughton Steel. The products are sort of so unphotogenic that this was the best I could do. It's like, all right, give me a photo of the building. You know, it's a steel company. So what Stoughton Steel does, essentially what their competency is, why they exist, is that they make a foot for backhoes, right? That you sort of clamp on to a backhoe stabilizer, and it sort of grips the ground. That's what they make, essentially. But Anders wasn't super passionate about, heavy equipment. He wasn't super passionate about what Stoughton Steel did. It was a business that was founded by his dad. Although he was part of it, he wasn't like super into it. Instead, what Anders is really into is pizza. Super into making pizza. So one day he was reading a book about making pizza, and he read a section that said that the best conduit for making the kind of pizza crust that you would get in Italy is steel. And he was like, mind blown, right? I know I can get a piece of steel. So he goes to the shop, cuts a piece of steel, takes it home, bakes it, in his oven, just in his home oven, and found that it was like reasonably good enough that was sort of an indicator that, this could be a thing. So he actually started using the manufacturing equipment that he had at his dad's plant to create this thing called the baking steel. Baking steel is like this sheet of steel. It weighs like 4,000 pounds. No, not really. It's like 30 pounds. Slides into the oven, and it sort of replicates like a professional pizza oven that you would get in Italy, and it makes the most amazing crust ever. How does Anders market this, right? So what he did is he started holding classes in his kitchen in Stoughton, Massachusetts, where he lives, and started inviting friends over. Word grew, and so on. He put up a website. He bought a camera. He learned how to take amazing photos of the pizza that they were producing like this. Like, this is a killer pie right here. He also started writing about it, right? So he started blogging about it. He started creating videos around it too. Like, doesn't he look like an insane pizza guy? Right? He's really, really into this. The only way he knew how to really describe how much he is into this is to create content about it. And I said to him, but Anders, there's like a million places you can go to like learn how to make pizza. There's a million places. And he said, the thing is, no one is going to match my passion, and no one can tell my story like I can. I love that he thinks about it in this way, right? It's not just about producing content that shows you how to make pizza. Instead, it's about how to tell a story better than the other guy with passion. So I do think the bigger, bolder, braver takes guts. I also think, though, that it takes heart. Just like Anders has, he puts his whole soul into this. As I said, I do think that the biggest missed opportunity in marketing is playing it too safe with the content that we're producing, telling the story that's a little bit too conservative, essentially. I think about what William Shedd, Presbyterian minister, said. He said, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And I think the same is true of our content, right? I think the same is true of our marketing. We can sort of do the same old that we've always done. But I think the opportunity here and sort of what's inherent in that opportunity and the imperative on all of us, I think, is to push it a little further.